First up with Kane Cornes. Thanks to Sportsbet, I'm Sarah, Olle and Kane. For the third year in the row, the Lions, they have a date on the final Saturday of September at the MCG, overcoming a halftime deficit to record a 29-point win over the Pies. They are plucky, this Brisbane outfit.
How good were they? I mean, they came out of the block so hard and they had the game on their terms, playing it exactly the way that they would have set it up, high uncontested marks, then challenged in the second term and responded after half-time with some stoppage dominance that was just blew Collingwood away. They kicked 6 goals from stoppage in the third term. All their gun players got going and Collingwood really had no answers.
One co-captain, he watched from the stands. We'll get to Neale in just a bit. But the other in Harris Andrews absolutely dominated a game-high 13 marks, Kane. He was simply everywhere.
Yeah, for me, he's probably the player of the finals, really. I'm not sure how he's going to vote in the Gary Ayres medal because a lot of the midfielders get all of the votes and win all of the awards. But if you're looking at leadership, if you're looking at influence, and if you're looking at his ability to set up the play, like Mason Cox went to him and he just said, "Good luck, Mason." He just showed him no respect whatsoever and he just judged the ball so well in the air. So his numbers throughout this final series are extraordinary. As we look at those, he's taken 15 intercept marks throughout this series, and that probably doesn't tell the story of his dominance as well. His job on Ben King last week was as good as I've seen. So negating, but also having the ability to come off. He took 7 last week, had 20 plus disposals, and just didn't let Ben King touch the footy. So he's enormous. Geelong will come up with a plan for him. There's no doubt about that. They'll be ready for him and they'll try and take away his influence. So he's going to have to be ready for that, not dissimilar to what Collingwood did to him in a grand final a couple of years ago.
And from one star to another, how insanely good was Will Ashcroft? His finals legacy, Kane, it continues to grow, doesn't it? And you mentioned last week, you think he's actually better in the absence of Neale. He can't have proved that again.
Yeah, so if you're looking at Harris Andrews having the best final series, this guy's right behind him. Even in the loss to Geelong, he had 30. And what he's doing now is he's influencing the score. So he's kicked 4 goals in the last 2 weeks. He just is impacting with his disposals. I think early on in his career, he was about finding the footy and getting a lot of it, but not turning those ones into real damage on the scoreboard. That's the change in his game. The guy's 21. He's won a Norm Smith medal, and he's building one of the great finals legacies that we've ever seen already as a 21-year-old. So I just think they've got some young players that are getting this experience. Like Wilmot's played in 13 finals. Like he's 21 years of age. Same with Fletcher. So they just have a core group of youngsters coming together, mixed with the experience that they've got, Andrews and Zorko and the like. It's the perfect mix as they head into another grand final.
Time now for Volcano.
So, as I said last week, I admire the fact that Neale is putting his hand up and doing everything he can to give himself a shot to play. But, gee, I was staggered by this from Danny Daly on SEN today.
He's done absolutely everything he possibly can to give him a chance next week. He's one of those guys who's just a lead at what he does. So he's certainly surprised us. He's surprised the medical team, and he's well in advance as where he should be in terms of that injury. So he's got to get through a training session Tuesday. If he gets through that and then one on Thursday, there's probably 90% chance that he's ready to go. Yeah.
I can't believe it. And I think you've got to, as a club, look after and protect your players. There's a few factors to this. Neale's played 3 quarters in 7 weeks. He came back from the quad injury, and we see this incident here early on in the 4th quarter against Geelong. Now, they ruled him out for the season. Remember, they gave him 0 chance of playing again. He's popped his calf. He has torn his calf. And in 2 weeks, you're telling me that the club are going to risk picking him and the flow-on effects of that in many facets. Is he going to be able to perform? Is he going to let his team down? Is he going to get injured early like we saw with Pendlebury last night? And then the risk factors that come with Achilles when you're protecting your calves. We've seen that in the NBA where NBA players have had calf issues and then their Achilles goes because they're not protected, and then risking next year with where they are at. So I admire him. I think he's tough. I think it's incredibly brave what he is doing. But to think that Chris Fagan and the like would risk putting him out there, I think it would be the most reckless grand final selection call perhaps we've ever seen.
Is a half fit or a 75% fit Neale still better though than the next player in? I mean, there's going to be some sore bodies. Jared Berry unlikely to feature as well, Kane.
provided he can get through. So I think we saw it with Connor Rosie at Port Adelaide a couple of years ago. Like, you tick all the boxes at training, but then it's a completely different story in a game. Now, that was just a home and away game for Connor Rosie, who's much younger than Lachie Neale. But when the intensity rises, when fatigue sets in, we saw it with Jeremy Howe last night. We'll get to that shortly. Howe was okay for a half. He was useless after half time because fatigue sets in and you just can't go. I just think they're setting Lachie Neale up to fail if they select him. And this isn't a criticism of Lachie. Absolutely, as I've said, love the fact that he's trying to push as hard as he can because he'll regret it forever. This is more one for Chris Fagan to think really seriously about, is he doing the best thing for his player and the ramifications if it all goes wrong on the biggest stage of all.
Now, Kane, you can be accused of many things, but I think when it comes to your consistency with Collingwood, I've got to hand it to you. After that first game and that loss to the Giants, you said too old, too slow. Did you think they were too old and too slow yesterday at the G?
Yeah, well, I'm not taking a victory lap on it because they surprised me. I didn't think they'd make the finals, and they did. So they've surprised me. There's Scott Pendlebury grabbing the car from exclusive vision behind the goals. He lasted 4 minutes, so unusual for him. He's got a pretty strong history of durability, but I just think Craig McRae had a nightmare at selection. He lost the game on Wednesday, and he also lost the game with his matchups and his selection. So here's my check. He hadn't trained. He was injured, and he couldn't go. So he was ineffective and didn't influence at all. We know about the matchup with Sidebottom on McCluggage. There's Jeremy Howe as well, so I touched on him. Like, to think that he was going to impact. He'd played 4 games since round 17, and in those 4 games, he played 34% game time. And you want to chuck him out there in a prelim final in a hot atmosphere like this. Like, look at this vision. He cannot turn, and after half-time, he was useless. Started on the bench in the last quarter and spent 6 or 7 minutes on it and came on and can't jump. Like, if Jeremy Howe can't jump, then he's ineffective, and this matchup with Sidebottom, I think Craig McRae had a terrible day at selection and in the coach's box. Still, Sidebottom's a warrior. What a player he's been, but to think that he can go with a top 10 player in the league at the absolute peak of his powers with the running capacity that Hugh McCluggage has, he torched him. He just burned him off where they had to change that matchup pretty early on in the game. So all your plans are gone. So yeah, I think that the too old, too slow thing is absolutely true. Admire them for having a crack at it. Not sure they had any other options to try and win it this year, but it was always going to be, if you don't win it this year, look out. There is going to be so much pain coming for this club with the risk that they've taken.
You're right, it felt like it was the last dance for them this year and they had to go for it. But is the cliff coming for this list and its age profile there? You can see Scott Pendlebury at 37 all the way down to Darcy Cameron there at 30. Kane, I mean, experience, you can't buy it. But there does come a time where you've got to let these players go as well. Well,
there's no doubt about that. The cliff is coming. Brisbane had the 8 youngest players on the ground in that prelim final yesterday. Collingwood had the 8 30-plussers as we're showing there. They gave up a whole heap to get Houston. 12 touches in a prelim final for Houston. Ineffective for the majority of the year. They paid a huge price to get him. They don't have the draft capital. Perryman as well, paid a big contract for Perryman, has just not been the player that they would have expected that he would be. So how do they revitalise this list with no draft picks and no capital and not a whole lot of room in their salary cap? I don't know. They're Collingwood. They're a big club and players will always want to play for them, and they're well coached and they've got an outstanding football program. But I think it's going to be 4 or 5 years of extreme pain after the risks that they've taken this year.
4 or 5 years when you've got a generational talent who's 22 in Nick Dacos. I'm not sure about that, Kane. Can they afford to waste those years?
Well, that's it. He can't do it on his own. It's not basketball. Even in a 5-man basketball team, one player is not enough. You need 2 and 3, and then you need the depth off the bench as well. And this is a team that requires 22 on the field and a squad of probably 31, 32 to really compete. Look at Brisbane. Look at the talent that Brisbane have got. Look at the draft capital that they have also got with the access to father, sons and academies coming in. Oscar Allen's coming. Draper's coming. Who knows about Ridley? What have Collingwood got? So Gold Coast, how are they going to compete with them? Adelaide. So there's so many teams that are far in advance of where they are. I admire it. They had a crack. They had to. But now they're going to have to pay the consequences for those risks that they've taken at list management.
So the Lions, they will meet the Cats, Geelong disposing of Hawthorn at the MCG on Friday night by 30 points in a fantastic preliminary final. And really, It was on the back of one man, Kane, and one man only, Patrick Dangerfield.
So here's them going 3 goals up, and we just cut away to the leadership of Patrick Dangerfield. Hang on, we're good. We're good. We got this. We'll have to put this in slow motion. He just goes to his teammates and says, I got this. Have you ever seen an individual put the team on his back like this and say, I've got this before like this? No, Wayne Carey maybe in the 90s was a player and an example of someone who would just say, I got this, guys. I got this. We're gonna be okay. That's exactly what he did. 30 plus, the 3 goals, the 8 clearances. He had more centre bounce clearances than Hawthorn did as a team.
Oof.
So the coaching of Chris Scott to inject him to centre bounce at the latter stage of the year and in finals has been a masterstroke. And I just wonder, like another premiership for him, where does it put him in the history of the game? Like, we're talking the greatest of the great players. This is my top 10 of the AFL era, and he's at 7. And look at the names on there. And I say that, and I don't say it lightly, because I look at his resume, and it reads like this: 8 All-Australians. He's got 4 best and fairest. He's got the AFL Coaches Association Award in 2016. He's got a Lee Matthews Trophy. He's got a Gary Ayres Medal, which is the best player in finals. He's got the Premiership. He's got the Brownlow. What else is there to do for this guy? If he wins another one, he might even be top 5. I said maybe 12 months ago that he's going straight to legend status in the Australian Football Hall of Fame when he qualifies in 20 or 30 years' time. That's how good he is. But frightening how good a performance that was and where he now sits in the history of the game.
Chris Judd a little stiff there,
A little
Kane.
bit. It's a hot top 10, Sarah. I just didn't think Juddy had the longevity that some of the others did. I mean, Danger's up to 360 games. He's gone at over a goal a game. And now the ability to evolve. Like he's a dominant midfielder, a bash and crash clearance beast. And now he's a dangerous forward. Like, so that's what the greatest do. They evolve their game, and that's exactly what he's done.
And there are stars across every line for Geelong. But we want to highlight a lesser light. And this is a player, I'm going to remind you, Kane, who was taken with pick 11 in the 2019 rookie draft. And that is Tom Atkins. He had a job to play on Newcombe, and he came out on top.
Didn't he just get his matchups right, Chris Scott? So I thought Mullen to Newcombe. That was my prediction after what he had done on McCluggage in the qualifying final. But Chris Scott's going, no, we'll go Mullen to Watson because he's so important for them, particularly in second halves. We'll go O'Connor to Weddle, and we'll go Atkins to Newcombe. Now, Newcombe, as we'd spoken about, his 4 finals, the highest rated player, like his finals record extreme. And Atkins just played the role perfectly. Notice how he does never get in front of him. It's always from behind. He's always got him. So even if Newcombe does get the ball, he can smother him and make his handballs ineffective. He's always there to catch him and tackle him. He's the best tackler in the league. Broke the record, I think, in that stat this year. And I think he goes to Will Ashcroft. I can't see them picking Lachie Neale. I just don't think they will, Brisbane, in the end. I think their wise minds will prevail. So Will's going to have his work cut out for him because I'm not sure he's been tagged like that ever in his career.
Just when it comes to Hawthorn, the eye test said that they were 1 or 2 premium midfielders short, and that really did come to fruition, didn't it, on Friday night?
Yeah, so Newcombe was nullified, as we just touched on, and then you go, well, who's next? Who's going to get it done? And there's the 2 that were enormous against Adelaide. Ward was enormous. He didn't touch the footy in the second half. Josh Ward did not have a possession in the second half, and Warple was so fumbly. Now, he's not going to be there. He's going to be at Geelong next year, according to Riley Beveridge on afl.com.au, but they couldn't get it done. Dylan Moore started really strongly as almost that high half forward extra mid, but yeah, they're 1 or 2 short, and there's no surprise that they're right in the hunt for Zach Merritt, who's going to help out a lot next year.
One of the big stories to emanate from that game, and indeed it will dominate discussion this week, was Mabior Chol's tackle on Tom Stewart, the Cats defender. He was concussed and he won't feature in this weekend's grand final because of the protocols. But what did you make of the 3-match suspension, Kane? It's pretty harsh.
I'd love a double volcano on first up. I think we did it once this year.
It's your show, you could do it.
We did it once this year, but the double volcano. So what I can't wrap my head around, and I love this game and I love everything about it, but how can we have a game where an on-field action is legal, but then that leads to a 3-match suspension? That makes zero sense to me. Is there any other sport in the world where you can pull off a legal manoeuvre on the field, perfect tackle, didn't break any law in our game, yet the following 24 hours you're suspended for 3 weeks and had the potential for missing a grand final? So I just can't get my head around that. So let's change the rules. That has to be a free kick and a report on the spot, because we can't have a legal action that leads to 3 weeks. I'm not sure what else he could have done. I think it's embarrassing for the code. And this is not Michael Christian's fault. This is an AFL broader issue about the crackdown on concussion. I get it, but we can still knee someone in the head going for a mark and knock them out senseless, and that's legal. No worries there. But a tackle or a bump, no go. If you get them high, if they're concussed, you're out. But it's legal on the field. So, I don't know, makes no sense, and it would have been a huge story had Hawthorn won that game of footy.
I'd be shocked if that matrix doesn't change over the summer. Would you be shocked if the bye isn't moved to the week before the grand final, just given that Tom Stewart could potentially be the catalyst now for that, Kane?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was well on the way of happening anyway, so I think that makes sense. But whether Tom Stewart will be right in 3 weeks, who knows?
We don't know,
It depends. I don't know where they get the 12 days from. Like, that seems to be a made-up number that someone has come up with. I'm not sure whether the medical evidence behind 12 days and you're right to go. I'm just not sure what that says. So, yeah, but we'll see. I'd be surprised if that doesn't become a pre-grand final bye.
Time now for the temperature test, thanks to Sportsbet. And Kane, this is a projection for the eliminated finalists, where you think their fortunes lie in 2026.
Yeah, no surprise. I've got Collingwood frozen. I don't think they'll make the 8 next year. I think they've got all sorts of challenges. It's going to take a miracle for them to solve them. I really like Adelaide. I'm not sure about the Giants, as we touched on last week, whether they have reached their ceiling and whether this current group has taken them as far as they are going to go. I love Freo. Their demographic is perfect, so I'd be surprised if they're not there on prelim final weekend next year. And those two up the top, they could be the equal grand final favourites, I think, or premiership favourites if Hawthorn can make some big moves in the off season, and Gold Coast don't need a whole lot to be right there again.
No surprises there with your Hawks running hot for next year, Kane. But running hot this year, it all comes down to Brisbane and Geelong on grand final day this Saturday at 2:30 p.m. at the MCG. Where would you rather be? And I'm just wondering, do you think the Lions can flip the script on Geelong? Of course, they met in the qualifying final. The Cats far too good that day, but we have seen it before. In 2003, it happened. In 05 and 06, the Swans and Eagles, they traded places from qualifying wins to premiership. And also in 2015 with Hawthorn. Can it happen again?
No one's going to give them a chance, I don't think, just because Geelong are so settled. So apart from Tom Stewart, they're well rested, their good players are in form, they're really healthy, they're well coached. Brisbane have done a power of work to get themselves in this position, and they're banged up. Lohman's sore, Dunkley's sore, who knows about Neale. Berry's the other one. So, yeah, I just think Geelong are in the absolute sweet spot, and it is going to take something extraordinary, one of the greatest grand final upsets probably, if Brisbane get this done going the long way around and with all the travel that they've had.
It would be remarkable, and these two clubs have just been so consistent as of late. I mean, the Lions, if we look at their record, it's now 3 grand final appearances in a row, and for the Cats, I mean, they have just been crazily consistent under Chris Scott, and here they are again, Kane.
Best 2 coaches in it. So how good's that? We have the best 2 coaches in the game facing off on the biggest stage of all. So Chris Scott, hard to argue that he's not the best coach. I think I said a couple of weeks ago that you got Chris Scott in the coach's box, you start 3 goals up. But Chris Fagan's not far behind him. And he's getting the credit that he deserves finally. But look at that record, and look at where they were when he took over to this position as an absolute powerhouse, Chris Fagan. So, yeah, it's going to be on, and I just love the way that those 2 coaches have gone about this season and all the challenges that they've faced and their ability to respond to those.
So you think the Cats, but do you have an early Norm Smith kind of prediction?
Be one of the running machines, Bailey Smith or Max Holmes. Probably Max Holmes for me, I think.
All right, this has been First Up with Kane Cornes. Thanks to Sportsbet. We'll see you this time next week, where we'll know the Premier.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.